This video asks a question that should disturb most Christians. If the book of Daniel is still sealed, what prophecies can we trust? You see, in the last chapter of his book, Daniel is instructed to conceal the words of the prophecy and to seal up the book until the time of the end. Now, what exactly does that mean, and what are its implications? In fact, Daniel wasn't only given this instruction once, but 3 times. In Daniel 12:4, as we just saw, but also in Daniel 12:9, and in Daniel 8:26. 3 times the angel instructed Daniel to keep the words of his prophecy sealed and secret. So Daniel is asked 3 times to conceal the meaning of his prophecies. There were no exclamation points in Hebrew. The authors repeated those things that were important, so obviously this is important. This sealing is also unusual. Out of 66 books in the canon of Scripture, only the book of Daniel was sealed. That means out of all the books, the only one we need to be wary about what it means, is Daniel. I first became aware of this about 25 years ago. A Jewish friend asked me about what was going to happen in the future, in the end times. And because he was Jewish, he and I began to study Daniel. I thought it was a great opportunity to witness to him as well. When we reached the portion of the 70 weeks, I showed him how the Messiah had already come and died for his sins. Needless to say, this shocked him. My friend took his notes about Daniel to his rabbi, whose short answer was, the book is supernaturally sealed until the end times. We Jews don't read Daniel. Isn't that convenient, I thought. They don't read the book that has the answers they need. Christians, however, haven't had the slightest hesitancy to study Daniel. From the earliest church fathers on, Christians have given their ideas about what the prophet's various visions meant. But I want us to stop and think, has that been wise or foolish? If the real meanings of the prophecies in the book have been kept from us, if they've been hidden from us, might we inadvertently have been propagating false doctrine for centuries about the end times? Think about what this might mean. Might we have been wrong about one or more of the kingdoms in the dream of Nebuchadnezzar's statue? What about chapter 7 and the vision of the 4 beasts? Or chapter 8, the vision of the ram and goat? Chapter 9, the 70 weeks? And chapter 10, 11, 12, where we find the great vision? What if the majority of the church has been teaching interpretations of these prophecies which are mistaken, at least in part, because the teachers could not understand them? Because Daniel was supernaturally sealed. If Daniel truly has been locked up and the meanings kept from us, we need to do some very deep thinking on the matter. This is not a trivial issue. The first question we need to answer is, when will the book be unsealed? When will its meaning start to be made known? Daniel was instructed by the angel exactly when this would be, the end times. He was told the book would be sealed until the end times. So we must ask, what are the end times? And are we in them already? Because if we're not, we need to be very careful saying what the prophecies in Daniel mean. Maybe we need to keep quiet about what Daniel's prophecies mean to us, because maybe we don't really know. Now, some will say we are in the last days right now, and guess what? They're right. Hebrews tells us the last days began with the first coming of Jesus. The last 2,000 years, or all the last days. But is that the same as the end times? Others will say Daniel was unsealed when John wrote Revelation, and we will discuss that concept in just a little bit. But I think we should let Scripture interpret Scripture for us. We shouldn't speculate. The book of Daniel should tell us when the end times are, or when the time of the end occurs. But we have to look. And it does tell us. First in Daniel 8:17, then again in Daniel 8:19. The angel is repeating himself again to show us that this is important. The time of the prophecy in Daniel 8, in that chapter, is when the time of the end begins. Daniel 8 is the key. If you want to know if that prophecy has begun yet, we have done a video on it. Click the banner if you want to watch it now. If not, I'll tell you that in my opinion, the prophecy and the end times have begun, but just within the past 15 to 20 years. That the modern fulfillment of Daniel chapter 8 that marks the beginning of the end times began about 15 to 20 years ago. Again, if you want details on why I believe that, watch the video. That's good news, bad news. The good news is that in my opinion, Daniel is now unsealed and believers can begin to understand it. The bad news is that every theory about the book of Daniel that was developed prior to 15 years ago may be in error. Shocking, I know, but this means that we need to closely examine all of our most treasured beliefs about Daniel. Does that mean our most beloved Christian expositors were wrong? Yes, I believe it may mean just that. Not because they weren't intelligent or even because they weren't spirit-led, but because they were writing about a sealed book, one whose meaning was supernaturally hidden from them. So if a theory on Daniel is older than 15 years old, be wary of it. So if you believe the legs of iron of Daniel 2 are Rome, that is a very old idea developed when the book was sealed. Now that doesn't mean it's wrong, but it sure doesn't mean it's right. Feel free to watch our video on this subject when the banner appears to see a fresh, new, eyes wide open look at Daniel 2. If you believe that Daniel 8 is only about the war between Persia and Greece and was fulfilled long ago by Alexander the Great, that also is a very old idea, developed while Daniel was still sealed. When the banner appears, feel free to watch a new interpretation based on the angel's statement that we've already seen, that this prophecy is about the time of the end, not just history. And if you think the tribulation period begins with a peace treaty, that is also a view come to while the book of Daniel was still sealed, and during a time we couldn't properly understand it. So when the banner appears, click to watch a video on why a peace treaty may happen, but why it isn't the sign of the tribulation starting. Wow, you're probably thinking to yourself, if all those ideas that I've had are mistaken, I'd have to rethink my entire end time views. And yes, that is exactly what I did over the past 10 years myself. So, welcome to the club. Many will probably not be willing to throw away their treasured theories, and I realize that. But I think that is what Scripture is telling us to do. So think and pray about these things. Now let's get back to the book of Revelation, because this is quite interesting. John is specifically told not to seal up the book of Revelation. So why was he told that? I mean, there's no other book in the Bible that says don't seal it up. Well, because Revelation contains things about Daniel. So anything we read about Daniel in the book of Revelation has been unsealed. And anything Jesus taught us about in the Gospels about Daniel has also been unsealed for the last 2,000 years. For any of you out there that are still doubting that the book of Daniel was sealed, the instructions of the angel to John to not seal the book of Revelation should be absolute demonstration that Daniel was sealed. Why else would the angel instruct John to not seal Revelation? Now, let's get back to the sealing of Daniel. If we look at the actual wording, it says, "But as for you, Daniel, conceal these words and seal up the book until the time of the end." We've already seen that. Many will go back and forth, and knowledge will increase. Look specifically at that last phrase, the words, "many will go back and forth." Is this referring to going back and forth from the book of Daniel to the unsealed books, like Revelation and the Gospels, to gain further knowledge? I believe it is. So do not give up hope. The book of Daniel has most likely been unsealed within the last 15 years, and certainly Jesus' commentary in the Gospels and John's in Revelation about the themes in this book, those things are all unsealed and have been for 2,000 years. Now is the time to study that book like never before.